Hi everyone, this is Alina and I am getting ready to start outlining my book. I'm changing up the location a little bit. Usually I work in my office, but I got a new mic so I can kind of move around my house and do some other things while I'm trying to outline my book. But if you have missed the previous videos, you can go ahead and go back to those. I'll link the last one like up in the corner. I think it's over here. Might be over here. I don't remember. We are here in my bedroom because I am a couple months postpartum now and baby's sleeping, and I just wanted to stay kind of close to her so that I could help her out if she needed help. Kids are having a party downstairs because we finished homeschooling, so now I'm moving on and trying to get to some of my stuff. Outlining is weird. It's weird. I know that there's 3-act story structure. There's also 9-act story structure. There are like tons of ways that people outline, and I have never found doing it that way to be useful to me. For those of you, if this is your first video that you're watching, I've already written a book. It's out querying right now as we speak, and it is 140,000 words. It's an epic fantasy, and it's the first novel I ever finished. I'm excited to have it querying. It's kind of a hard sell because it's supposed to be the first in a series, and so I'm starting to write a book that is just one and shorter and done. And so if you want to know anything more about the book that I've already written, you can go to my website, the link's in the description, and just learn a little bit more about that. But everything that I learned from that, I am trying to apply here and share it with you guys as I take the next step into writing my next novel. I'm just going to get started. I'm going to start here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this all done today. It might take a few days, so bear with me as I kind of start doing this and talk you through what I'm thinking about while I start on my outline and how I get it all written out. Okay, so first things first, the first thing I like to do is set up some kind of chapter structure. I don't make any hard rules for myself. When I first started doing it with my last novel, my epic fantasy, I had 3 parts, and then I broke up each part into 7 chapters, and I thought that that would get me as far as I needed to go. It ended up not being everything I needed. I ended up getting rid of the whole 3 acts and just doing chapter by chapter, and it turned out being, I think, 42 chapters in the end. So yeah, I had high hopes for a 21 chapter thing and then just had to break everything up because I had so much to say. And the chapters got so long, and I wasn't exactly sure what to expect going into that book. But I started with that framework, and that really did work for me because from there, well, let me back up. Part of the problem was that I expected myself to stay at that 21 chapter limit and to keep everything structured that way. I thought that that would help me to just stay organized and keep it concise. But as I was writing, I realized, okay, I need to throw in some more here. When I started doing that, I would start just adding scenes in chapters, but then I ended up with chapters that were like 8,000 words that really did not need to be. Then I finally gave myself permission to break up my chapters and have it be a little bit more fluid of a structure. The problem that I find with like the 3-act story structure or the 9-act story structure is it can get very blocky, like this needs to happen, then this needs to happen, blah, 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 blah. If you've never experienced listening to a story or watching a movie or reading a book before, I can see why that would be valuable because you want your stories to end up having a climax and having a die down after that and having everything like some incident that builds up to what you're gonna get to in the climax. And I do see the value in understanding those structures, but I do not start my stories with that because it doesn't work every time. I don't know how to say it better than that. It just feels too confining when I'm trying to be creative. And so what I actually do is I set up my own chapter structure from the beginning, and this time around is going to be a little bit easier than last time around because last time around everything was just coming out of my own head, and this time around I'm using an old ballad to structure my story. If you look 2 videos ago, which I might link up here, we'll see, or it will be in the description. In that video, I put together just kind of a board of all of my ideas and everything that I wanted to use. It was just kind of a brainstorming session, just throwing everything, all of the research I could find into one place where I could refer to it and get ideas and then throw it back together into my outline. I'm going to throw that up on the screen if I can. So I'm taking Scarborough Fair. I am organizing each verse in a certain order, and I'm going to use that order to tell the story that I have in my head. It's not going in order of how it is in the story. I'm kind of mixing things up so that I can tell the story the chronological order, that way that I want to, with all of the riddles kind of matching up correctly. And that's how I'm going to structure all of my chapters. And my idea right now is that I will have a page that is kind of a section page that will be the verse, and then I might have 3 chapters after that. It depends. It's really hard for me right now because since I wrote a story that's 140,000 words, this one will probably end up being closer to 80 to 90,000 words. I was telling my husband when we were talking about this before, because he and I are writing the book together, I was saying, well, we wrote the last book together. He'll probably help me with this one too, and we'll make it just a project between us. But when we were writing the other story, it started out, I think when I finished the outline for it, the outline was 30,000 words, because I wrote out in small form what I wanted the story to be. And then when I finished writing the first draft, it was 80,000 words. When he finished his draft, it was 120,000 words. And we just always found that we had to add more context, more detail to make it more interesting and to give the reader enough knowledge that they knew what was going on without just like dumping everything on them in the story. But we just found that we had to keep adding more. And so getting to 142,000 words, I think we have at the end of that book, that was like, okay, I've held back a lot of information and I've also given a lot of information, but this feels like a good place. And having to only write 90,000 words might be difficult for me because I just want to like run rampant with my ideas. So that's going to be a struggle this time around. And I'm thinking the 12 verses that I have for this story, I'm going to break it up either into 2 or 3 chapters each. And then from there, I'll take the next step. So I'm going to do that right now, just get that kind of organized in my app. In Scrivener, that's what I'm using. And then I will check back in with you guys when I've done that, and we'll move on to that next step. Hi guys, so we have moved into my dining room. Baby's asleep again. I had to walk her for a little bit, and the kids are playing upstairs, so hopefully we don't get any interruptions. I have organized my chapters by the 12 verses, and I put 3 chapters in between each verse. I'm gonna kind of run with that, see what happens, see how I like it, and yeah, we'll just kind of see how it goes. Since the story is 2 points of view, I'm kind of trying to switch it off. So I'm doing verse, 1 point of view, other, 1, and then verse, bum, 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 verse, bum, 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 and switching off. I don't know if that's going to make any sense when it comes down to like actually putting the story together, but that's how I'm doing it for now. It may just end up being 2 chapters each verse, or it might just be random and we'll kind of see what happens. But for now, that's how I've organized it. The other thing that I've learned over the course of writing my first novel, the epic fantasy that I wrote with my husband, was the idea that Brandon Sanderson put out of promises, progress, and payoff. At first, when I was writing the stories that I was writing, especially the last book, it was just, okay, I have ideas for scenes and they're kind of going to go in this order that'll make sense and done. And I realized when I was learning this, because I was doing his online courses, which I highly recommend if you're going to be writing, I was doing his online courses over the course of writing this novel. So as I was learning about his promises, progress, and payoff, I had already written out most of the story. I think I was probably already done with the first draft. And there was a scene that I had in the story that I did not want to get rid of. I really liked it. And I didn't feel like it did much to move the plot forward at all. There was no movement in that scene except, well, and I wouldn't even say except. There just wasn't any movement. All that it did was give you a better foundation for who the characters were and their relationships. But I wasn't ready to give it up because it was one of the scenes that I loved the most. And I genuinely just enjoyed reading it and wanted to be able to share that scene. And so when the story went out to beta readers, I was kind of worried about this chapter because I thought it would be boring for people and they wouldn't want it. And they'd say, there's not really much in here that we need. So yeah, that worried me a lot when I sent it out to beta readers. But when I got it back, there was a specific line in this chapter, in this scene, that I didn't think much of. It didn't really matter to the overall story of the plot, but basically it was one of the characters just promising like, hey, I'm sending a gift for your kid, or it's his niece. And it was just like a little line that I threw out while I was writing, and everybody loved the scene. Everybody enjoyed it. Nobody wanted to get rid of it. They felt like the story was still moving on with that scene there. Everything that was sent back to me from beta readers was just at the end of the story, it was like, wait, what did he send to his niece? I want to know what the birthday gift was, or like whatever. And I realized that in that scene, I had set up a promise that I'm promising you this is who this person is. And he thinks about his family members, and he's cognizant and aware, and knows when birthdays are and wants to do something about it. And I'd set up this promise of who he was, and then I didn't allow anybody to experience the payoff of what that scene had promised. It just made me realize that you are making promises and showing progress and showing the payoff in so many different ways in the story, which Brandon Sanderson talks about, but it's harder to see how valuable those little seemingly insignificant things are when you're writing. And I just noticed it with my beta readers that time around. And when I realized, oh, they want this payoff, they want me to mention that later, it gave me an idea, and some of the other things that needed to be fixed that they were expecting payoff of or progress around in the storyline as they were reading it, I was able to fit a lot of those things in together in another chapter that I wrote. And so it ended up being really valuable and tying a lot of loose ends together. So when I'm going through and writing this outline, I'm thinking a lot of that as I go. I'm thinking, okay, I'm making a promise about this person's character, and then I'm making a promise about what the plot's going to look like, kind of what's going to happen. And every chapter I'm looking to either make a promise about something, which I think you can do, all the way up to the end of the story. You can make a promise at the beginning of the last chapter and give the payoff at the end of the last chapter, and it can all be just at the end. But if I'm not making a promise, showing progress towards one of the plot lines or one of the subplots, or giving some sort of payoff to a previously made promise, then I'm not doing my job as a writer, and people won't feel like they want to read on to the next chapter. That's what I'm going to be focusing on as I start writing in these chapters and seeing where I want to go with the chapters individually. The other thing I'm doing is the sheet that I put together that has all of my research that I did 2 videos ago, which you can go watch if you want a little more information on how we did that. I'm taking the whole sheet that I made from that research, and I'm trying to plug in everything that I can as best as I can. So all the characters that I have, I'm making sure to put in, okay, this is where they're going to be introduced, this is how I'm going to introduce them. This is going to be how their story plays out over the course of the book and where they end up, so that I can make the promise of who their character is, what we're going to experience from them, show that progress, and then give the payoff at the end. And I also have like other things like weather patterns in the area that I know that I want to use. So as I'm doing the outline, I'm looking for opportunities to plug that in to make really cool scenes. Whether it's they're going to have this conversation, it's going to be at the edge of a cliff, there's going to be coastal winds, it's going to be hard to hear each other, they're going to have to speak louder. Maybe that they can't do that because they're being hunted after or something. I don't exactly know how I'm going to use everything in this story, but this whole thought process is what's going through my head as I'm trying to organize my outline and put everything in. The other thing is I am specifically creating the chapters from the beginning so that when I go through and I start writing, I have a paragraph of what's going to happen in each chapter. I don't have to create a new chapter. I don't have to, nothing like that. It's already ready for me. I just jump in, I see this paragraph of what I'm trying to do, and then I just start writing. There should be nothing holding me back from putting my fingers to the keyboard and typing immediately when I sit down to write and get however many words I want to get. I set it up in chapter form, write in each chapter on Scrivener. You could do this if you're doing Google Docs and you just have your separate pages for chapters. Just make sure you have a paragraph on each one that tells you what's going to happen in that chapter. And that way you're going to see that paragraph and you're just going to be able to start writing and get going like from the get-go, which I find so valuable. Sometimes you can also put it like in the synopsis area of Scrivener. I just write it in the chapter because it's easiest to see it there, and I can just see it, write, refer, and keep going. Sometimes I'll even keep it at the bottom of the scene when I'm typing, so that as I'm writing and the page gets longer and longer and longer, all of my stuff is just right beneath, and then I can highlight as I go. So I hit that point, I hit that point, I hit that point, and now it's that. And when the whole chapter is done, then I'll delete it if I want to, or I'll put it in the synopsis and put it away so that I can see it later, so I know what I was trying to do with that scene if it doesn't seem to work out when it's all said and done. So that's kind of where I'm going from there. So I'm just gonna kind of jump in here and start writing out my scenes, introducing people, throwing in all of these little details that I have off of my sheet that I created in episode 2 with the research, and we'll kind of see where we're at that point. Hi guys, it is Tuesday and I finally finished my outline. We have not had internet the whole morning, and I was just troubleshooting with our internet provider for like 30 minutes finally, because I thought it would just kind of fix itself and then it didn't, and so finally I just had to call and ask for help. Got it figured out. I finished my outline this morning, it took a lot longer than I thought it would, and that's okay, but I had forgotten how long it takes to write an outline and to try to get everything organized. And so if it takes you a long time, do not stress over it. I am seasoned in doing an outline, apparently, because I have a book that is out being queried but it took a lot longer than I had anticipated it would take. Which, that being said, it was only like maybe 5 hours to do the outline for a whole, what I think will be 90,000 word book. So I'm not too worried about it, but yeah, it did take me some time. And part of that is that I have kids, and so it's kind of like up and down and stop and go. And that can kind of get me out of the zone, but once I sit down and I'm back in the zone, then I can kind of get things moving along again. So it did take a while, but I did finish it, and I am hopefully either tonight or tomorrow going to start on the next video for you guys, which is putting together a music playlist on Spotify. So just a little bit more fun. It'll probably be a shorter video, but I'm just gonna walk you through my process and how I come up with a playlist. And yeah, that'll just be more fun for us, and then we will get into character creation after that. So stick around, keep coming back for the videos, please subscribe, and I would love to have you do this with me. I'm gonna start my 5 weeks, 50K words in just a few weeks, so we can do it together. I would love to have you doing it with me. Yeah, I'm happy you guys are here. See you guys in the next video.